In December of 1990, veterinary technician Karla Homolka stole a vial of sedatives from the office where she worked. One night, as her family hosted a dinner party, she drugged her 15-year-old sister, carried her to the basement, and presented her to her boyfriend Paul Bernardo as a virgin sacrifice, literally. From there, the sadistic acts between Karla Homolka and Paul Bernardo only escalated. They began a torture spree that lasted years and resulted in the deaths of several teen girls in and around Toronto, including Homolka's sister, before they were finally caught in 1992. In the end, the Ken and Barbie killers were found to be responsible for at least 13 rapes and 3 murders in and around Toronto between 1986 and 1992. This is the chilling story of Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka.
Canada's notorious schoolgirl killer is an occasional volunteer at a Montreal school. City News has learned Karla Homolka has been in the classroom and on a field trip.
And then hearing this,
Scary.
it shakes things up.
I mean, she has more freedom than I do.
In what respect?
I need to go through a whole rigmarole for a pardon in order to travel just because of a past violation from like 15 years ago, and yet somebody who did these things is free.
At first glance, Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka certainly didn't seem like a pair of serial killers. They may have looked like a normal young couple from the outside, but the Ken and Barbie killers were anything but. Before Paul Bernardo was put behind bars for multiple murders, tortures, and rapes, he was a salesman by trade that lured his female victims using pickups and pitches he learned on his day job. He studied how to entice women like he studied how to do well in business. He read the novel American Psycho like his Bible, and when he met and married Karla Homolka, his sadistic streak only increased as she encouraged his behavior. The Ken and Barbie killers were born. Paul Bernardo was born on August 27, 1964, in Ontario, Canada, to Kenneth and Marilyn Bernardo. The Bernardos were a financially well-off, stable, middle-class family. But as with everything else in the story of Paul Bernardo, this deceptively normal exterior masked a dark truth. In 1975, Kenneth Bernardo was charged with child molestation, and there were rumors he had even molested his own daughter. Paul Bernardo did not seem to be unduly affected by this dark turn in his childhood. Observers recall him as being always happy, a young boy who smiled a lot. It wasn't until he was 16 when his mother revealed to him that he was actually the result of an extramarital affair that Bernardo's outward behavior began to noticeably change. Paul Bernardo was good-looking and charming, an unfortunate combination that he used to manipulate women and take them off their guard. Before long, he would give in to a far darker impulse. Starting in May of 1987, the suburb of Scarborough in Ontario was plagued by a series of horrific crimes. In the early hours of the morning of May 4, 1987, a young woman getting off the bus was grabbed and brutally raped near her parents' home. Over the next week alone, there would be 2 more similar assaults. The women were all between the ages of 15 and 21, and the attacks all included beatings, intense verbal abuse, and dire threats to discourage victims from going to the police. This led authorities to conclude that they had all been perpetrated by the same man, whom the newspapers quickly dubbed the Scarborough Rapist. During his nearly 5-year rampage as the Scarborough Rapist, Paul Bernardo raped or attempted to rape at least 19 young women. And this is only the official count. The victims were all young women often grabbed around bus stops, although at least one 15-year-old was attacked in her own bedroom. Paul Bernardo met Karla Homolka in 1987 when he was 23 and she was 17. Homolka was born to Dorothy and Carol Homolka in Ontario in 1970 and was the eldest of 3 siblings. She was described as a well-adjusted, pretty, smart, and popular child, with a fondness for animals which led her to start working at a veterinary clinic after high school. Like Bernardo, there was nothing in Homolka's outward appearance that hinted at the depravity lurking just beneath the surface. Her friends from school remember her as smart, attractive, popular, and an animal lover. Indeed, following her high school graduation, she began working at a local veterinary clinic. But then, on a fateful midsummer trip for work to a veterinary convention in Toronto in 1987, 17-year-old Homolka met 23-year-old Paul Bernardo. The two connected instantly and became inseparable. Karla Homolka and Paul Bernardo also developed a shared taste for sadomasochism, with Bernardo as the master and Homolka as the slave. Bernardo and Homolka eventually became engaged. Homolka described to a friend how, "Paul and I are happier than ever. He's being so great, so romantic, but that's typical of my honey." But the truth was that 3 years into their relationship, Paul Bernardo was getting bored. He complained to Homolka that she was not a virgin when they met, and soon turned his sick attention elsewhere, to Homolka's 15-year-old sister, Tammy. Bernardo's desires, Homolka once again encouraged them. She told Bernardo that she wanted him to have her little sister's virginity as a Christmas present. Thus, the crime that remains perhaps the Ken and Barbie killer's most disturbing was set in motion. On December 23, 1990, while at a Christmas party at the Homolka family home, Homolka spiked her own sister's drinks with animal anesthetics she had stolen from the clinic where she worked. That night, while the rest of the family was asleep and Tammy was unconscious, Homolka held a halothane-soaked cloth over her sister's mouth and took turns raping her with her fiancé, while videotaping the whole brutal incident. When Tammy began choking up vomit, the couple panicked and tried to hide the evidence before calling an ambulance. The teenager never regained consciousness and was pronounced dead at the hospital. Although the mysterious chemical burn on her face was noted, the drugs in her system were not detected, and her death was ruled an accident as the result of choking on vomit from alcohol poisoning. Once again, the Ken and Barbie killers evaded justice. Despite her family tragedy, Homolka and Bernardo were wed 6 months later in a lavish ceremony near Niagara Falls. Bernardo allegedly insisted that Homolka vow to love, honor, and obey him. Karla Homolka also agreed to provide Bernardo with young victims. Homolka gifted her husband with another 15-year-old girl, a pet shop worker whom Homolka had met through her veterinary work. Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka married on June 29, 1991. The very same day, a horrified couple canoeing in Lake Gibson discovered concrete blocks containing human body parts in the water. The remains belonged to 14-year-old Leslie Mahaffey, who had disappeared on June 15th. She had been kidnapped by the Ken and Barbie killers and abused over the course of several days. As this grisly discovery was made, the killers enjoyed an elaborate wedding ceremony that included their entrance in a white horse-drawn carriage. Almost a year later, on April 16, 1992, the couple struck again, this time grabbing and killing 15-year-old Kristen French. They left her body battered and her hair partially shaved in a ditch along a rural road. Police soon realized that the two murders were connected. After the release of a composite sketch that resembled Paul Bernardo, tips were called in, some from co-workers and friends who reported Bernardo's disturbing penchant for violence. In January 1993, Homolka left her husband after he dealt her a particularly vicious beating with a flashlight. Within 2 months, a DNA sample taken from Bernardo turned up as a match for the Scarborough rapist, and he was put under surveillance before eventually being arrested in February of 1993. During that period of questioning, Homolka learned that Bernardo had been identified as the rapist, and to protect herself, Homolka admitted to her uncle that Bernardo had abused her, that he was the Scarborough rapist, and that she had been involved in several of his crimes. Karla Homolka quickly got a lawyer and sought a plea bargain in exchange for testifying against Paul Bernardo. She claimed Bernardo had told her he had raped at least 30 women. The Ken and Barbie killers were now pitted against one another. The government agreed to a 12-year sentence in exchange for her cooperation, although this backfired dramatically when the videotapes the couple had made showcasing their gruesome crimes were discovered, and Homolka's true nature was revealed. Karla Homolka was not the abused victim she had attempted to portray herself as, but rather a cruel sadist. Homolka was ultimately released in 2005, and she remarried and settled into a small community in Quebec. She spent some time in Antilles and Guadeloupe under the name Leanne Bordelais with her new husband, but as of 2014, had returned to the Canadian province where she spends time evading the press, spending time with her family of 3 children, and volunteering on her children's field trips. Paul Bernardo was found guilty of all charges against him and consequently sentenced to life for the rape, murder, and kidnap of 2 teenage girls, though it is believed he killed a couple more. His rape victims number somewhere in the double digits, presumably around 13. Bernardo's application for parole in 2018 after 25 years in prison was denied after only 30 minutes of deliberation. A lawyer on behalf of the victims' families reported that there's never been an apology by Paul Bernardo. There's been never any indication whatsoever of remorse. Indeed, Bernardo admitted to the court that he hadn't felt anything for his victims at the time of his crimes. thank you for joining me on this chilling journey through the life and crimes of the Ken and Barbie killers. If you found this episode intriguing, be sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, so you won't miss our upcoming investigations into other captivating true crime stories. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and keep seeking the truth.